waters between East Asia's great powers have shifted from routine to risky. Over the last weeks, a pattern of deliberate moves has turned familiar shipping lanes and patrol routes into a tighter, more contested stage where warships and carrier groups test reach, alliances test resolve, and every transit carries a strategic subtext. Close to Japan's southern islands, Chinese naval units have been operating at the edge of what had once been regarded as routine seaborne activity. Patrols and drills by surface combatants, including modern guided missile destroyers, have taken them closer to Japanese territory than in recent years. At times, those ships have threaded corridors that bring them nearer to the Japanese mainland, passages that, because they are rarely used by foreign warships, carry a heightened signal. To Japan, to Taiwan, to the Philippines, and to the United States, these are not anonymous movements at sea. They are choices that broadcast capability and intent. Across the same map, allies are answering back. In the Philippines this spring, the multinational exercise Balikatan opened at a scale that has drawn attention across the region. More than 17,000 service members from the United States and the Philippines are joined by forces from partner countries, including Japan, Australia, Canada, France, and New Zealand. For the first time in this edition of the exercise, Japan's units are engaged at an elevated posture, taking part not only in coordination and logistics, but in live fire and ship-sinking drills that demonstrate kinetic interoperability. What was once a bilateral show of assurance between Manila and Washington has broadened into a wider expression of allied deterrence. The proximity of these allied drills to sensitive areas, the waters off the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea, is not accidental. Live fire exercises and combined maneuvers are designed to sharpen readiness and to rehearse integrated responses. But they also produce the very friction they are meant to deter. Beijing treats joint drills that build capacity among states it sees as competitors as a coercive signal. Beijing's own responses, larger patrols, carrier transits, and simulated exercises are framed as defensive measures against what it calls external meddling in matters of sovereignty. At the center is Taiwan, a long-standing flashpoint with global consequences. For Beijing, the waters surrounding Taiwan are both strategic and political. The People's Liberation Army Navy has, in recent operations, shown the ability to operate outside the traditional corridors it once used. Carrier strike groups have traversed the Taiwan Strait. Surface combatants have operated beyond the so-called First Island chain, the string of islands stretching from Japan through Taiwan down toward the Philippines, a geographic barrier that for decades defined the operational boundaries of China's naval reach. These operations are meant to demonstrate range and to create new realities at sea, the capacity to cooperate in task groups, to sustain presence, and to complicate the freedom of maneuver available to potential adversaries. To Tokyo, these developments have been a catalyst for change. Japan's self-defense forces have been recalibrating their posture, doctrine, and rules of engagement, aligning more visibly with U.S. strategy while standing up new capabilities to protect sea lines of communication and to respond to incursions. Recent Japanese deployments that shadow or monitor Chinese task groups underscore a shifting security calculus. Distance no longer guarantees insulation. That shift is bipartisan, strategic, and increasingly operational. For Taiwan, the calculus is existential. Taipei must contend with the reality that the sea approaches to its democracy are more heavily trafficked by military units than they were a decade ago. Taiwan's leadership has repeatedly warned that the intensification of Chinese activity, carrier transits, concentrated surface groups, and frequent aerial sorties raises the risk of collision, misreading, and escalation. In the language of defense planners, the danger is not a single catastrophic event, but a spiraling series of incidents, a close pass that triggers a defensive maneuver, a scramble jet that misinterprets radar returns, a tense radio exchange that hardens into hostile action. Commercial shipping feels the pressure, too. These seas are not just battlegrounds. They are arteries of global trade. Any disruption to normal navigation through the Taiwan Strait, the East China Sea, or the wider South China Sea would ripple through supply chains, raise insurance costs, and force rerouting that adds time and expense to goods flowing between Asia, Europe, and the Americas. In that sense, tactical naval posturing has strategic economic consequences. The escalation has several components worth noting. First, there is the modernization and growing confidence of China's Navy. A new generation of escorts, destroyers, and the domestically built carriers give the People's Liberation Army Navy platforms that can sustain longer deployments and operate together in task groups beyond coastal waters. Second, there is the convergence of allied activity, American forward presence, Philippine cooperation, and expanded participation by partners like Japan, Australia, France, and Canada. When exercises scale up, they test the seams of alliance interoperability, communications, targeting coordination, logistics, and combined rules of engagement. Third, there is messaging. Every transit, every drill, every joint communique is also a line in a public argument about who has the capacity to shape outcomes in the Indo-Pacific. Yet the situation is not simply a binary of escalation and counter-escalation. At sea, the practical demands of navigation, safety, and law still matter. International law, freedom of navigation in international waters, the right of innocent passage in territorial seas, the conventions that govern conduct at sea create standards that most maritime nations rely upon to avoid unintended clashes. Those norms are now being bent by the strategic aims of multiple parties. The result is an environment in which routine transits are watched more closely, in which naval commanders must balance aggression with restraint, and in which a single misstep could set off a chain reaction. Risk management in this environment requires hard, practical tools. Communication channels between naval commands need to be robust and used frequently. Established mechanisms such as naval hotlines, prior notification of exercises, and the practical protocols embedded in bilateral and multilateral dialogues need reinforcement. The U.S. and its partners have long argued for clear rules of the road at sea. Bringing those rules into sharper operational reality is a pressing task. That includes clarifying intercept procedures, deconfliction routes for aircraft and ships, and the expectations that each side has for proximity operations. Diplomacy must run in parallel with deterrence. Exercises like Balikatan are an important demonstration that the United States and its partners can operate together at scale. They send a message of solidarity and of operational capability. But they are also opportunities to open working-level talks with regional navies, to standardize safety procedures during exercises, and to coordinate on humanitarian and search and rescue plans that can reduce the chance that an incident becomes a military crisis. Domestic politics matter as well. In Japan, as defense policy evolves and investments increase, the political calculus at home shapes how far Tokyo can go in projecting power abroad. In the Philippines, the hosting of large-scale exercises is shaped by public opinion, by the political relationship with Washington, and by Manila's own territorial concerns in the South China Sea. For China, domestic narratives about sovereignty and national rejuvenation give leaders incentives to project strength. For Taiwan, the imperative is survival and international support without hastening the very confrontation it seeks to avoid. There are practical steps that all sides can take to reduce the fog at sea, increase transparency around major maneuvers when possible, expand confidence-building measures that are not easily weaponized, such as joint exercises focused on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, institutionalized communication pathways between navies and air forces, including at the level of ship captains and squadron leaders. Use regional fora to agree on minimum standards for conduct in the air and on the water. These are not cures for the underlying political disputes, but they can lower the temperature and prevent accidents that might otherwise cascade. Strategically, the contest is about more than individual events. It is about shaping the maritime environment and the political story that surrounds it. If a country can demonstrate persistent presence, seamless logistics, and credible strike capabilities, it alters calculations about what is possible in a crisis. If alliances can demonstrate that they can integrate sensors, communications, and fires, they alter the calculus of potential coercers. That is why both sides invest in drills, in platforms, and in signaling. But signaling has costs. It creates cycles, signal, counter-signal, escalation. The current pattern, large allied drills in the Philippines and matching Chinese deployments near to Japan and Taiwan, is a textbook example. Each wants to avoid direct combat. Each wants to influence perceptions of resolve and capability. Between those aims lie the danger of miscalculation. The very success of presence operations in deterring aggression depends on avoiding the breakdowns that turn deterrence into conflict. What could reset the trajectory toward calmer waters? Sustained diplomacy anchored by credible defense postures would be the first line. High-level communication that narrows the field of immediate disagreement, for instance, limiting certain types of exercises near flashpoints or agreeing to notification protocols, would make accidents less likely. Strengthening regional institutions that can mediate or at least provide transparency around maritime activity would help too. Finally, domestic leaders across the region must weather short-term political pressures in favor of long-term stability. That is a difficult ask, but the alternative is greater instability. In the meantime, navies will continue to navigate this tighter space. Ships will go where their commanders judge necessary. Aircraft will patrol where doctrine requires. Journalists will track who sailed, who watched, and what was said. Diplomatic cables will be drafted, and analysts will parse the pattern for meaning. For populations across the Indo-Pacific, the stakes are both immediate and existential. The safety of the seas they rely upon, the stability of a region that anchors global trade, and the broader question of whether competition can be managed without conflict. This is not an abstract contest of hardware and headlines. It is a test of crisis management, of alliance cohesion, and of the capacity of states to hold strategic competition within controlled channels. The choices made by commanders on deck, by diplomats in conference rooms, and by leaders weighing domestic political wins will determine whether this phase becomes a longer period of stable competition or the tinderbox that incubates a crisis. The Indo-Pacific has entered a volatile chapter. The challenge now is to keep the competition constrained, to allow nations to signal and to deter without letting those signals harden into the very outcomes they hope to prevent.